welcome to Game Set Matchup, the podcast where we talk everything partnerships, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Welcome to Game Set Matchup, the podcast where we discuss all things partnerships. Brought to you live from Money20 here in Amsterdam. I'm your host, Greg Watts, and I'm joined by my co-host and co-founder and COO of Finder, Jenny James. Please welcome our guest today, Clare-Louise Cotter, Head of Sales at Connect Earth. Clare-Louise, hello and welcome from Amsterdam.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Well, we're very excited to have you, and I believe this is your first podcast.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
How are you feeling?
A bit nervous, bit apprehensive. Don't know what I might say.
Oh, you're going to be fine, I promise you. Well, look, let's kick off with intros. Perhaps you can tell our listeners a little bit more about you, who you are, your background, and your role at Connect Earth, because I believe you just joined.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so if we start off from after graduating university, which was, I hate to
5
say,
years ago.
Thank you, Greg, absolutely. Yes, please believe that. Yeah, I joined investment banking, and from that I was doing foreign exchange sales, so working in a large investment bank, covering asset managers and really just helping them exchange their money through our traders. I did that for multiple years, where I got to move to America with them, live in Hong Kong, Singapore, all over the world before I moved back to London. And then I actually took a bit of a career switch. And they do say with everybody there's 3 careers in them. Mm-hmm. So I'm currently in my second one, so stay tuned. And that's when I joined my first technology company. And I was running the sales team there. And really it's about, in this world, it's selling to the banks. So as opposed to where I worked for banks, I'm now selling into them, providing them with a solution. And that brings me to where I am right now. So I work for Connect Earth. And what we do is we help banks understand their carbon emissions. So they're able to help enable their clients to understand any of their carbon footprints and any insights that will help them reduce those carbon emissions. And at Connect Earth, I run the sales, partnerships and marketing team, so the full go-to-market.
Love it.
Very cool.
So it sounds like you said you're in your second era.
I am.
So what made you decide to embark on more partnership sales focused roles, having started off in investment banking?
Yeah, so I think when you actually have a look at yourself and who you are, I really cherish relationships and collaboration, and I really do think there's such value in a good partnership. So for me personally, that's part of who I am in my life and also in my working life and my career. So partnerships are a key part for any job I've been in without you realising it. Mm-hmm. Everyone you work with is a business partner, a finance partner, a HR partner. Mm-hmm. And in this world, when you are in that small startup, scale up, really exciting, having those strategic partners can just really add that value so quickly, but also help with that reputation, your brand, all of that. So for me, it's really been about understanding the value of a partnership and then just the best way to approach it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting you say that, because I think with partnerships, the people who, in my opinion anyway, who do it best are people who naturally are, and as Greg says, curious, but naturally are people that enjoy, working with other people, understanding other products and services, exploring different opportunities, because essentially partnerships can be found anywhere, and it's the people who kind of are interested in seeing how you could do something in a different way that make the best partnership people.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Brilliant. So you mentioned around, obviously you've been in a very corporate environment, you're now in a startup environment. What would you say, I guess, are either the similarities or differences when you're looking at partnerships, either in an enterprise business or in the world of startups?
Yeah, I mean, they're 2 very different worlds. And I would say that the first one, if you look at the corporate world, the advantages are very clear. There's that brand recognition. And there's also that resources. There's that, even without being rude, there's the money they have to put behind it. So when you do join that larger partnership, you get put into the machine and they know how to do it. And it's really exciting and it works really well. On the flip side, with that startup, there's a bit more flexibility, it's a bit more agile, you can do really quick decisions, which sometimes in a larger partnership it might take a bit of longer with the legal compliance. So they're 2 very different approaches, but also both have huge advantages, and others can be a bit more challenging at times. But as long as, and with all of partnerships, as long as you have a clear and aligned goal and objective, then both of them can work out really well. You have to go in knowing exactly what you want the outcome to be.
Absolutely. And I think it's not forcing it when there isn't a fit at that time, even if you want to, because I think sometimes you can come across a really exciting business or idea or service, but if it isn't the perfect fit or a great fit, you're starting off the partnership maybe not on the best footing. And I think it's around just exploiting opportunities that make the most sense rather than the ones sometimes that are the most exciting.
And look at us. I mean, I met you both last year. At the time, we didn't have an opportunity. In Money 2020 last year, and we didn't have an opportunity to work together. A year later, now I'm like, actually, I can really use your services. Would you be available?
Yeah.
And it's about just keeping that partnership, that relationship, communication, and you never know where it might lead.
No, actually, that's very much our kind of philosophy. You just never know where it'll lead, and we often at Find to talk about people, we like partnering with people who we call normal. Just normal people who are
should I leave? No.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, there's the door. No, but it's just, I think, as you say, it's just about not going in perhaps with a fixed agenda, just exploring where the conversation and the relationship and the partnership might evolve. And I think we consider that to be quite exciting to see where it may go. And we often talk about exploring, let's explore this together, see where it'll go. And I think we would go as far as saying a sale perhaps is maybe a one-off transaction, can maybe infer power on one versus the other, whereas I would see a partnership as very much two-way. Both people or multiple people put something into it and equally get something out of it. It's long-term. It's not a one-off transaction. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I completely agree. And even obviously in our sales team, when we talk about our clients, they're our partners. We always, because for us, it's about that they have a need for us. We want to help them with that need, and we want to make sure we are completely aligned. And it is long term. It's never going to be. I think those days of doing a quick sell and running away are long gone. It's all about that long term relationship, that long term sell. So for us, everyone that we've got as our client, we are a partner. They're helping build our product roadmap. We are working together, and that's why when you are looking at buying or purchasing software, you do look at the culture, you look at the teams, you look at how their sustainability, how their clear values are, all those things actually matter to you. And I think you should be very aware of all your suppliers and they are aligned to your personal goals.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it makes it a stronger. It makes it a true partnership and a stronger relationship when you do even just language changes like that, talking about our partners versus our clients, our prospects in the kind of pipeline, just instills that and continues that on. So you do start to think about we're doing this together versus kind of an old school, the worst kind of old school sale where it was trying to pile on as many additional services and value adds that you could that will be chargeable because you're trying to get the most amount of revenue out of that sale because you don't think it will come back. I think there is a big shift where people are thinking about actually being, as you say, more long term and thinking about, actually it might be this, we start on this scale and we scale up versus trying to go all kind of big bang at the beginning of an opportunity.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that brings us really nicely on to our next question, which is, so looking at Connect Earth, what would you say makes for a gold star partnership or a brilliant deal, and how do you go about creating them?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I definitely feel communication's key. So by that I mean with partners, often it's the easy, at the beginning it's all fresh, it's new, everyone's so excited, and then it slowly scales off and tails away, and then you're like, I haven't touched base in them. So having that regular touch point and making sure, I've mentioned a bit about having those aligned goals are so important at the beginning, but also the touch points. Are we where we said should we be? Is there something that we've missed? There's been an element. So really just making sure you are still on track. But then what often doesn't get mentioned a lot is celebrating the success. So maybe the success is just that, you've had a really good meeting or you've enabled their sales team and we had a really good partnership strategic discussion. Let's celebrate that together and let's keep this partnership going. And often people don't do that enough. You don't really...
Why? Why do you think they don't do that enough?
It could be like time, resources. How many people say to you, I'm just so busy? Or even coming to a conference, having 3 days out of your office, we're all still trying to do our daytime job as well as be at a conference, when in fact, this conference is amazing. We should be giving it its full attention.
Absolutely.
You should be speaking to everyone you should. You should be able to take three days out and be able to do that. I feel the same for partnership. If I'm in a meeting with my partner, I want to give them the attention they deserve and the follow-up and then celebrate that success. So can I take 5 hours out of the office to do that? Yes, I can.
Fine.
And it's about just really restructuring your resources and just making people aware that you are giving up time, they're giving up time. Let's respect that. Yeah. So I do sometimes feel that it's time.
I think it's really powerful because I think there is that piece where naturally time spent when things go wrong, and you need to spend that time. But if you haven't balanced it out with spending time when things have gone well, then it can all start feeling a little one-sided because the time and energy is being really driven at a point of, things, maybe a challenge has arisen or something's not quite gone to plan. So if you make, as you suggest, the time to actually celebrate the successes, it's going to feel more balanced, and it doesn't feel like a ton of communication is only happening when things aren't quite where they need to be.
I think also just slightly off on a tangent as well, but you kind of, what's the word? You prompted the thought. That actually, I think a lot of times, with the best partnerships, it's when things aren't going to plan or when things are going perhaps, dare I say it, wrong, that actually it's how everyone behaves and supports each other. And actually, is there the trust in those moments where it's not as good or as rosy as you would perhaps like it? Is there the trust in there that we can work through this together?
Yeah, and it's like anyone who will say that you learn the most about a company during the difficult times.
Absolutely.
And I think the same with the relationship. I think even those who've been through any financial downturn or any time the economy's been a bit not looking great, being able to stick through it is where you really learn about your partners, but also about your colleagues, your client, your everyone. They're also important. If you all stick together during the down times, then the good times are just even more positive.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And that segued us in so beautifully to the next question, which is about challenges and pitfalls. So they are inevitably going to come up. And as you're just touching on, it's how do you go through that? So what would be your kind of advice or hints and tips around how do you deal with them when they come up and overcome them? And maybe how do you prepare to make that a bit smoother when they do?
Yeah, I think we've learned a lot. So in any startup, the first, few years are the learning years, I would definitely say. So we are now 3 years old. Yes, thank you. It was actually June 2021 was when we came into life. But yeah, so I would say that with partnerships, it's quite easy to find partners, if that makes sense. And you can sign up with 20 plus partners and you're like, they're going to be a partner, they're going to be a partner. But actually, are they the right partner? Are they right at this time? So you have to take an honest look at yourself. I would say we've all made that mistake of signing too many people or committing ourselves to too many people. And actually, they're not the right ones. We're not being honest with them and they're not being honest with us. So I think there's an element of knowing that. So knowing your resources, knowing that actually where we are right now, would we get more benefit from that larger one or would we get more benefit from that smaller one but who is so well known in that region that actually they would elevate us so much more just because that's a region we're strategically going after now. So it's really about, I think one of the mistakes we've all made is we've signed everyone or we've agreed to partner with everyone and they said yes to us and they said yes to us and suddenly we feel in our head we've got all these amazing new deals and everything's happening and there's so much opportunity and it's so exciting, but it's not actually feasible to give all of those partners the right relationship and nurture them the way they deserve to be. So instead, you're so stretched that you don't do it properly, and that's the worst thing you can do. So there's an element of saying no and then walking away and being like, not right now, but let's stay in touch. We don't know. So that's really our first mistake is resources and just really being honest about which ones you want to sign with. And I'd say the second one, and I've mentioned it already, has been goals, but also just being very upfront at the beginning. Goals do change. They really do. Of course they do. But for every partnership, you should go in with, this is what we're looking to do. Is this aligned with you?
Has to be aligned.
And if they say, not right now, but we could be, that's not right for you right now. Because where you are right now is really where they... Yeah, absolutely. Because there will be other people who will work with them and that's perfect. The amount of times we've had conversations where they're like, do you do X, Y, Z? And you go, no, but we could. And so exactly, your reaction is exactly that. So you say, not right now, however, something, but do you know who does do it? We can introduce you to X, Y, Z. And it's about knowing what's unique about your own company and offering and then just being very content with that while still developing and wanting to expand and grow. And finally, I'd say one of the mistakes or pitfalls we've all made is the compliance, the paperwork, mountains, getting really, really fixated on one line, which means you can't budge and it's 18 months later. And so these are things where we've all learnt. And so I would say, obviously, have everything signed and make sure that the compliance is all on point. But it's about also being known where to give a bit, where you need to, because otherwise you won't move forward.
completely. And I think there is that piece, particularly in the startup space. I know we felt it, where it is harder to say no because you are scaling a business, you're growing a business, and it's that piece of like, oh, well, it seems good, and there's the initial excitement because it might be a big brand or it might be an interesting offer, and then you kind of delve into it a little bit more and it's not kind of 100% right. It is difficult to say no because it's like, are we now saying no to something that could have changed the direction of the business? Or if we say no to this, will there be something else of equal value that comes along? But we found that whilst it's difficult to do, actually, when you do say no to something, it does usually generate something else coming along, and that means that that wasn't the greatest fit. But I think particularly in the startup space, that is really valuable advice because it's tough to say no, but you see so many people say yes to everything, overstretch, and then not able to deliver on it, which then sets you back. Whereas if you just kind of, say no and pick the things that really fit your business and where you want to be.
There's a very old, which is surprising I know it given how young I am, sales adage, which is in every RFP there's 2 winners, the one that wins it and the one that qualified it out.
Yeah,
and that's
that.
Exactly
I've
it.
never heard of that.
I haven't heard that either. I love it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I love
given
that.
how young I am, and I know. Yes, but anyway, it's very true. You know what? Qualifying out early, you are that winner. And winning the deal, you're the winner.
Yeah.
Everyone else who's gone through all that process and wasted hours and hours of very valuable resources, they're the losers.
Yeah.
Without going into too much detail, we actually, at Finder, we said no to we're obviously not going to name them on this podcast, we actually had to say no to a major global organisation a couple of weeks ago with something, and it was the right decision. So, you have to... Things happen for a reason.
Yeah, but it's not underestimating how hard it is.
It's hard.
And it takes a bit of back and forth till you get there because, you do have to kind of, really... Because it's not... Saying no, I think sometimes when you hear the advice to say no to things, I think it doesn't mean don't stop and reflect on the opportunity. You still need to take a bit of time. So it's not kind of don't knee-jerk the answer, but equally take some time to analyse it. But then when it is a no,
I think it's also, gut. There's a lot of gut feel that comes into this as well. I think, I was going to say to Claire's point, we're long enough in the tooth, but that's not fair. That's not true at all. But actually, there is. I think if you have a little niggle or something or some kind of feeling, it's for a reason. Mm-hmm. It's for a reason, and I think you kind of have to sit with that feeling and think, why do I have this little tweak or this little feeling? And I think I would say all the time it actually ends up being for a reason.
And in partnerships, as you mentioned earlier, you're going to be working with these people for a long time. And so you really have to be honest with yourself to say, do they have a culture? Are they a people? And actually you have to look at the company culture because people change jobs and move on. So you might form a partnership with this amazing person, but they, they're going to progress their career and maybe, move elsewhere. So you can't just look at the individuals you're working with. You have to look at the company culture because if the person you're working with moves on, are you still happy to be working with that organisation as well?
Well, to round us off, if I may, one last question.
Of course.
Thank you. What does the future hold for businesses when it comes to creating partnerships with each other, in your opinion? And what, if anything, will you and Connect Earth be doing differently?
Yeah, so I definitely think you can't talk about the future without talking about digital and digital transformation. And, Greg, as the tech wizard here, is that basically how partnerships will be in the future is going to be very different to how we're doing. Even this right now, the 3 of us sitting in a room together communicating verbally in real life. Would that happen in the future? I don't really know. Is it going to be AI driven? Is it going to be very different to even the way we can think a partnership should work? So I think you have to understand a lot of it will be that digital transformation, and that will be part of the future. However, nothing will replace human contact. It just won't. So. It really won't. Even if you see the children in school today when they're learning, it still has that human element which is needed. I think another one, so digital is going to be key. I think more about your ESG, so sustainability. I think having that partner who has the same values, the same beliefs, but is also a responsible, sustainable company is going to be really key. I know for us, we have the goal to be net zero. I know a lot of people do. It's on most corporate websites nowadays. By 2030 is the key for a lot of banks. However, how are they going about it? Are their suppliers also responsible for that? So I do think that's going to be huge when you are looking at partners, and people who are not talking about it now should be, because that's going to be huge. I think there's going to be a lot more cross-industry.
I do.
So as opposed to what we think nowadays is like, oh, I will just go with my industry and they're going to help me and they're known in this world. It's going to be so different now. I mean, it's going to be, there's no such thing as, manufacturing, go to manufacturing conferences. It's going to be all about it because we are all doing very similar. It's just a different industry. So I do think cross-industry is going to be key. And then finally, it's going to be more data-driven.
Yeah.
So it's all going to be about data and analytics. And when we think about partners, it's going to be very much looking at, is this bringing us that value we expect? And is there real value in that data? So yeah, I do think that those are the key things. I wish there was some magic ball I could say, and this is who we should go with, but I mean, we don't know.
No, I was going to say, I think the piece around cross-sector, I love it when I see a partnership announced and I have no idea what they're doing together.
Yeah.
And so I have to read it to be like, well, what would those two businesses do together? But they're always the most interesting ones because they aren't the most obvious. But then you look at what they're doing together and you're like, oh, that makes complete sense. But it's not front of mind. And I do think I agree with you. I think across sectors and very different industries will start to do far more partnerships, and they're going to be the more cutting edge things that people haven't thought about before. And partnerships gives a great way of doing that rather than businesses, becoming experts in things they're not experts in. Partner with someone who's an expert in it and convert, what you offer as a business service. So yeah, I think they're the exciting ones.
And that will then lead to diversity of thought.
Absolutely.
Is key
is
in
needed.
everything. Yes.
Yeah, we're a little, what's the expression? We're quite biased when it comes to diversity here at Finder.
We are.
100%.
Actually, just one parting insight. We actually concluded the other day that we don't have any white heterosexual men in the team, which we thought was quite interesting. Cutting the mould. Anyway.
Just on that note, at this company, it's the first company I've ever worked at where the leadership is 50% female.
At Finder.
No, Mike, so like our leadership team at Connect
Very good,
Earth.
very good.
I've never had that in my life.
Well, it's how it should be.
Well,
That's how the
I
planet's
know.
split.
I absolutely agree.
But I'm looking forward to when it's not a thing. But it still is a thing to
True.
celebrate. I mean, ultimately, it won't become part of norm. But right now, no, I love it. I love to hear it.
Congratulations.
Because it is so limited.
Thank you.
Well, look, thank you so much for joining us, Clare-Louise. It was absolutely wonderful having you. Amazing what a year can do. But I hope you enjoy the rest of Money 2020 in Amsterdam.
Thanks for joining this week's Game Set Matchup. Tune in to hear more about the need-to-knows and the do's and don'ts when it comes to creating successful business partnerships.